You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
That's right, folks. We're in Reason Meets Reality. We are the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Michael Liebowitz, who is also pretty much the star of this entire channel, Michael, since you are deadlifting it. You and Persephone are deadlifting it almost entirely on your own. Please tell everybody what the hell is going on while I am sitting here languishing in the dark continent, otherwise known as Europe.
Listen, here's the problem: Persephone's so pissed right now because you said I was deadlifting the show because she's
I amended that.
I know, but I'm just saying she is not happy. She's kind of raging right now. The cat headphones have been snapped in two. But look, I've got an episode right now out of The Rational Egoist with Andy Bernstein where we break down the movie. She wore a yellow ribbon. I did not like the movie. He loves it, but I think it's a good episode anyway. Coming up soon, Jim Valiant and I are going to be breaking down Justice. Next week, I'm going to be interviewing Nikos again. We're going to discuss the book Shane. Today, we got Everyday Ethics. Everything is going good. Megan has a stash of roasted whatever the hell that is, just in case I get hangry, which is always possible because there is an abundance of stories that can piss me off at any moment. Please remember we love the super chats and super stickers, and follow us on Twitch. Persephone's getting upset already because I'm forgetting all the stuff to advertise, but we're going to move on with the show because there's a lot to talk about. Get to it, Mark.
You did it, Michael. I think you hit everything, if I'm not mistaken. And Persephone, I did.
Spotify, she says.
Hello.
Follow us on Spotify,
Thank you
too.
very much. If Persephone weren't here, I think we'd forget our own you-know-whats. I'm not even going to tell you what they are. Michael, what? Don't go there. What?
You went there. What do you mean? You went there.
No, but you were going to take it even further than I wanted it to.
We have merch.
Yes, we do have merch, folks, and some of this merch is fantastic. I wore one of the wool caps, otherwise known as toques, in Canada to a couple of conventions, and people loved it. It says "fuck bullies" on it. But the one I really want is the principled motherfucker one. That's the one I'm going to wear everywhere if I can. Beanie or toque, all right, or wool, whatever the fuck.
And on our YouTube channel, I mean, listen, if you're a subscriber, we've got content. Persephone's going to be putting videos up there. I make videos. We also have a celebrity member of the channel. If he ever gets around to making videos, we'll get some of him up there. I'm not going to
waiting for scripts. I'm waiting for scripts. Somebody said they were going to write a script, and it just never happened. Whoa! What is that?
Incorrect. Wrong. I refuse to accept blame for this.
Didn't somebody say I'll write you some scripts?
I don't think so.
I
really kind of did.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank Dad, because I thought for a second you were going to make me feel like I'm absolutely insane.
For the love of everything holy, am I the only one that does anything right?
I posted the list of books.
You did. Thank you. Yes, if you want to see all the books that I read while I was incarcerated, not including college and certificate programs,
6 books, folks.
All
books.
6 of them are up there. Persephone has posted them to where?
The
where
website.
are they? The website. They're on the website.
They're on the posts tab of the YouTube channel. So if you go to the posts tab, you can see all of the recommended reading for every episode, and also the list of like 620 odd books, including
50. 650. Let's get it right.
600 and whatever. I didn't.
Yeah, it's 600. It was over 600. I posted it as well, so you guys
awesome.
Read it.
Awesome. Persephone is awesome. Persephone, did you read all the articles that I sent today? Just curious.
I did.
Scram.
Good. I read articles. I read some of the AI, but once it starts getting into the AI, I don't have that much time.
I read everything.
By the time
stuff
starts getting posted.
Okay, and it's all available. Bye, Persephone.
So, Michael, sometimes when you post this stuff to me, I wonder what is motivating the particular...
What do you mean post it to you? I send it to you. I don't post it to you.
When you send me the articles, sometimes I wonder what's motivating Michael today. And today you sent me stuff about recess and how much of a requirement it should be for kids to actually have recess because, as you and I know, kids don't really go out and play anymore. They sit by computers. Most schools have now cut down recess time or eliminated it entirely since No Child Left Behind. Because they have to pass test scores. They're neglecting this physical aspect of their lives. But it's more than a physical aspect of their life. I mean, it actually helps in their cognitive development, their brain development, and they're being deprived of this, Michael. But we're going to get into the weeds, but I wanted to know what inspired this today.
Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit about my process. I get up in the morning, whatever time it is. Sometimes I get up at 1, sometimes I get up at 5. Today I got up at 5:45. And in my emails, I get emails from 1440, Axios, Dispatch, Free Press, and probably something else that I'm forgetting. Epic Times. So that's usually the first stuff that I go through to look for the articles that I'm going to send. Now, a lot of the stuff today I just didn't really care about. So I'm actually reading more articles than what I send you. So once I leave there, I go to Fox News, Newsmax, the AP, Reason Magazine, Daily Economy, Mother Jones, Jacobin, the Independent Institute, and oftentimes I'll just say, what's the latest news in Iran? So this morning, one of the articles in 1440, the only thing that out of every not mainstream, but the main sources of information that get emailed to me that caught my attention was that. So once I saw that, I said, okay, well, how can this be interesting? I'm not going to do a story based on just this little clipping. So I Googled articles for the benefits of play for kids. And then I thought about from there, okay, what about recess? Because that's what the original thing was about. And from there, I thought, oh, this reminds me of the free range parenting movement. So I Googled that and came up with more. So that is how I got all the articles on that topic to you. And we've got $5 from Jenna Kleem. Thank you very much, Jenna.
Thank you.
I just am so sick of talking about Iran that I was hoping to find other stuff in this. I found interesting.
I think this is very interesting, Michael, because back in the day when I was born, somewhere around the colonial times, we had to entertain ourselves. As kids, had to get together and use our imaginations, create games, go out, play. We played football, baseball, tag, hide and seek. We rode our bikes everywhere, and basically it was. And this is sort of an overused refrain from the Boomers and Gen Xers. We got the refrain of just.
Oh no! Don't say it, please. Don't say it.
Be back when dinner's ready. Or
okay,
something.
I'll go for that. But were you going to say the other thing?
I was possibly going there, but you derailed me. Thank God.
Okay, good.
All right, so there was that, and there was very little supervision out there. In fact, there was no parental supervision. And we got in fights sometimes, we argued sometimes, but we always were able to negotiate the difficult territory of relationships. And I think it equipped us better in life, Michael. Being physically active, especially for boys, is imperative to their brain development, and I think to their testosterone development, because quite recently it's been brought to my attention that testosterone levels are lower than they've ever been in history for males, and I think in part that's because they're not out there doing.
Okay, listen. Okay. Listen.
Am I going too much? Am I doing too much?
No. It's just that I provided an abundance of materials that people can look at, and then they can follow leads from there. Nothing that I read today about childhood play said anything about testosterone in males. So, Mark,
this is my own opinion.
I understand that, but we're trying to give the people an accurate depiction of what's going on in the world. That's why I provide all the sources. You can't just make stuff up.
It's accurate plus my opinion. Hey, wait, read something from Robert Nacer.
Okay, I want to know first though, from all this play and everything, as an adult now, do you get upset when somebody raised their voice in the course of a conversation? I'm just curious.
I do not get upset when somebody raises their voice in the course of a conversation. In fact, Michael, because I'm an actor, I'm used to people raising their voices in the course of a conversation, and I even like it because it shows passion. In fact, my wife said she has to write today. All right. And she was like, if you're going to do your show, can you keep your voice down? I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Okay. Robert Naser with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much. He says, thanks again for the Saturday episode, Religion versus Life. It was actually Persephone, Jim, and me that did that. JSV in special, he says, thanks to Persephone for your experiences and insights. You inspired our Sunday show on Out Mormoning the Mormons. I actually shared a link to Out Mormoning the Mormons on my Facebook page. I'll share it again if it's still available to watch. I'm pretty sure it is. I'll share it again. Robert Naser, let me just tell you, can I go off the tracks a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Robert Naser is one of my absolute favorite people on the internet. He embodies what I think of when I think of objectivism, reason, benevolence. Always has a good insight. Even when I disagree with him, he disagrees respectfully and he makes good points. Great guy. Check out his stuff. And we've also got a $5 super sticker from Nicole Hingle. Thank you ever so much. So,
wait a minute. I have to address something Naser says here. Testosterone levels are lower. Speak for yourself. That is not for me. My testosterone levels are actually great. I'm talking about our poor, benighted youth who spent their time indoors, probably have vitamin D deficiencies, are incredibly fragile, and have low testosterone. And Michael, I heard something else.
I'm going to bet.
So I'm not even going to go there. But I want to get back to this topic because
okay. Let me just. I'm gonna bet on something, and I want Persephone to look it up. I'm going to bet.
How long is it going to take to mention?
2 seconds. I'm not mentioning that. Persephone, look it up. My bet is that lower testosterone is in large part due to an increase of soy in the diet. That's what I'm going to guess.
I would.
At nothing.
Indeed.
Listen, okay.
Indeed.
Now, can we talk about? We got another $2 now from Robert, and thank you, Robert, for the $2. Okay, so let's get back to the children. So, I didn't even know that this was a thing, but evidently with the No Child Left Behind Act and with the increased focus on scores, they started to cut back on recess because they're stupid bureaucrats and they don't know, their asses from their elbows. So, but what actually play has so many benefits to it. I was wrong. Find out what it's in. A result of, Persephone. I'm very curious about the lower level of testosterone now. It helps, like you said, with cognitive development. It helps with imagination, but also taking breaks in the day helps with refreshing. Kids go out to play. They learn how to negotiate. They learn, like you said, how to resolve conflicts. There's so many things that kids learn from play and from recess. They really do need this. Now, part of the thing, I do not want this. What is it? What is that?
I want you to. Never mind. I was going to go somewhere very bad. Look, I just asked Grok. Yes, lack of physical activity, a sedentary lifestyle is one well-established reason for lower testosterone level in boys, adolescents, and men. Thank you very much.
See, but I like that. You looked it up.
Michael,
that's good.
It's common sense.
It's not common sense. Then why didn't you say that before? You didn't say that.
I've said it multiple times, not in this arena because it's never been brought out of me before.
Okay.
But Michael, talk about the cognitive.
I'm trying to, but you're all wrapped up in testosterone. I don't know what it is, why you care so much about this issue, but whatever. I feel for Mark. They have supplements out there for people like Mark. If you need higher testosterone, you can go buy supplements. But anyway.
Wait a minute. I just told you my testosterone is great. I have the
testosterone. But we think that's probably wrong.
No, it's not wrong. I could show you. So. I could show you the numbers, baby.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to prove it because we don't believe it. Persephone, you want to make faces? Don't make me tell Mark what you said yesterday because I have a hankering too. All right. It was off the air, Mark. Anyway, yeah. So
Persephone.
Look, play is very important for kids, right? But they curtail this. Now, one of the things that they are talking about is mandating research across the country, which I don't like that idea either. What I like is the idea that parents get to choose what kind of schools they go to, and then they would decide whether the kids would be getting the recess, which obviously they need. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, look, the capitalist solution to this problem would be to privatize schooling, and that way parents could have complete control over what their children ingest mentally and what kind of physical regimen they follow. And we have a more health conscious society in many ways. And those people could send their kids to schools that really provided that kind of outlet for kids. So, of course, the solution is privatization, not mandating recess. And I think, Michael, all but somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 states have more or less cut recess down. And these other states are planning on upping the ante to 50 minutes. I remember my recess time. It's not only a good place to learn social skills, Michael. It's actually a place where you actually, because you're doing physical activity and not focused on mental activity, all the files that you've been accruing through the day file themselves, right? Haven't you ever worked on something for a long time, a writing piece, for example, and you're thinking, trying to compose your thoughts, and you've been banging away at it for an hour or two, but the best time you have is when you step away from it for about 45 minutes and come back, and suddenly you're refreshed. And that's what recess does, man. It helps to file and integrate all that information.
Okay, when you used to go to recess, did you tell the other kids that you were going to grow up to be an actor?
No, I was going to be a doctor. That was my thing. In fact, I won an essay contest. That they published my essay in the newspaper. It was the Los Angeles Times. I won the essay contest, and it was about me wanting to be a doctor. I had to read it on a night where everybody packed the auditorium, and there were 5 of us that won the essay contest. We had to read our essays out, and I used to treat my friends. So if they would fall and get scrapes, they'd come to me, Mark, what do I do? And I'd help them, bandage up their wounds. That's true. That's true. That's part of what I did.
You've been doing that since you were a kid? Giving medical advice?
That's what I did. Well, now people ask me for medical advice, and I'm clearly not a
No. Who asks you? You give it on your own.
Yeah, well,
I will never, as long as I live, forget that you put me on that Zycam. Ever. I'll never forget it.
You're the only person I've ever given that advice to that's had an issue with it.
The other people are just too scared to tell you because you're always telling people how you're going to choke them. Either way.
They're not scared. They just get healthy from it. And look, Megan could tell us right off the bat that Zycam is actually good at lessening the symptoms of a cold and reducing the longevity of the sickness. It's just fucking...
The evidence is inconclusive. Okay. But now, how do you think that this whole topic of kids playing connects with the free range parenting? I think there's a connection. Do you think there is, or is this just me?
Do I think there's what? I coughed on that.
You should have taken Zycam. Do you think there's a connection between the idea that children need to be playing and free range parenting?
I do.
Talk about that.
What I like about free range parenting is that they give an education to their child. They educate them up to a certain level, and then they let them be at that level. So with the extent of knowledge they have, they give them a great deal of freedom to explore at that level. We essentially, I'm not sure you get healthy from being choked, though. That's true. Well, actually, you can. It can improve your disposition if you're a jerk off. So, and that can also then protect you from being choked again. So there you go. You have a benefit, a health benefit all the way around. Yeah. So, Michael, you educate your child up to a point and then trust them to act within the limits of what you've taught them by allowing them to be free at that level. That's what free range parenting is. I don't know if you'd call what I experienced or what many of my peers experienced at our age free range parenting. I think it was more neglect.
That's the word that came into my head just now. I had the neglect style of parenting.
I think it was more the neglect thing, but you were forced to act a lot on your own and learn a lot on your own. And the parents provided, in my case and in your case, very little very little example for you to follow. So you had to work your way around a lot of stuff on your own, and you're too young to navigate some of that territory. And it's good if you have a parent that can take you through the early stages of it, like free range parenting. But I found, Michael, one that they pointed out one style of parenting which they called authoritarian. And noted that style was one of them. It was either authoritative or authoritarian, but it was a strange moniker to put on it. but they found that style to be the most successful, at least
Authoritative. I remember reading
authoritative.
about that. If you go to my list of books that I've read, early on, I read some books on childhood education and on child psychology and whatnot. And even back then, they said that authoritative was the best.
It seems like that one you are really providing guidelines for the kid, and that is what children really, really need. My mom sort of verged into the wannabe friend zone, where and there was a name for that parenting, but I'm forgetting it now. Permissive parenting, I guess, where they don't really contradict you. They want to be your friend, and they take certain pride in that. And in the 60s and 70s, that's the way I think some quote unquote enlightened parents wanted to be, and they thought that was the best way to parent. But it's really not, because the child is taking the reins in a way that they're not prepared to. Whereas authoritative parenting, the parent is the parent. They take the role of knowing more, having a wider context, and saying, this is the context that you have to follow until you're old enough not to.
It's so hard for me when I talk about this stuff, Mark, to be honest with you, because there's a tendency to say, well, this is how it was when I was a kid, but then I have to remember that I'm probably not the best example to tell people how I was raised or whatnot, because I ran around crazy, and that I was definitely in the permissive part of it. But I do remember my mother telling me, and this horrified me, for so long, about, the kidnappers are out there, the sickos, they're going to get you. And I don't want to say that none of that is a risk or a danger, because there are risks in the world. But the chances of getting kidnapped and things of that nature are very, very small. And we can't make all our decisions in life based on the least likely to happen dangers. Right. So
Yeah, I
agree.
agree.
I think you teach your kids appropriately, and you judge their maturity level, obviously, and you figure it out. But I do think that elements of freedom are important because of the same reason play is important. Kids need to be able to explore. They need to be able to suffer consequences. They need to be able to learn.
I agree. And sometimes, that's uncomfortable for the parent, because the kid's in a situation where they're going to get a little bit hurt. They're going to scrape their elbows. They're going to scrape their knees. They're going to feel a little bit of physical pain or rejection. That's not nice for the parent to experience either, but it's something that the kid has to experience to grow. What was the mantra?
Again, my mantra, this is from Megan, my mantra is agency within boundaries. Those boundaries are highly contextual, based on age, maturity, etc.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree with that. I also think that kids should play. They should get outside more. I think parents should get them off of their cell phones, get them off the computers as much as possible, and get them out playing, letting them be kids again, man.
Yeah. When I go through my old neighborhood, and I do all the time, because I'm a very nostalgia type person. So I love going through the old neighborhood. When I was a kid, there were always kids outside. Well, not always doing good stuff, but always kids outside playing football, baseball, whatever, fighting, something always. Now there's no kids when I go out. We'll go up there.
None.
I very rarely see any. Like I'm tempted to ask, but then I realize probably not a good idea. To ask somebody around there, hey, where's all the kids? That probably wouldn't go over well. Asking that question, but nevertheless, I do wonder, like, what is happening? We used to be out riding our bikes, whatever. They just don't do that any longer.
They're playing Red Dead Redemption, man. They're more interested in
What the hell is that?
media. It's a video game, so it's a game, and that's what they're doing. They're gaming, Michael, and their entire community is built on games, and so it's built in a virtual world where they sit down the entire time and play with a TV screen or a monitor for a computer. They just don't get out there anymore and stress their bodies, and that's how you grow and get strong. This is simply how you grow and get strong.
Yeah, I don't know if I talked about this, but I saw a meme recently that I thought was great. And the meme said, when I was 15, we used to steal my parents' car in the middle of the night and go driving around. My kid won't go take out the trash at night without an escort. And it's like,
Can I just tell you, I used to go over to my stepbrother's house. his mom was deaf, and she was married to a deaf guy. And around 11 o'clock at night, when they would go to sleep, we would sneak his mom's Dodge Dart. He would steal it. We'd go to Hollywood. We'd go watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show at the Tiffany Theater on Friday nights and Saturday nights at midnight. Oftentimes, we'd pick up friends who had snuck out their windows.
Girls. You picked up girls.
No, not girls. Guys, and mostly
guys.
Mostly guys. Yeah. Some girls, but mostly guys. And then we pile into the car, drive to Sunset, watch this movie until 2 o'clock in the morning, come back, and nobody would be the wiser. We did this every weekend for an entire year.
So not only were you taking advantage of handicapped people, but
my stepbrother was. Not me.
You were involved.
I was taking
I used to sneak out as well, but when I would sneak out, I used to try to get girls to sneak out. Like, I didn't want to just go see other dudes. I mean, I think that's, but whatever. We can agree to disagree.
Okay, so get on to the next topic about Brendan Carr, because this is interesting.
I'll tell you what happened. Let me just tell you real quick.
I'm going to have to shift locations.
We'll talk Brendan Carr in a second, but I will tell you this. One time I was with Subby, and these girls stole their parents' car, and they picked us up. One of these girls' father was he ended up the police chief. I don't know if he was the police chief at the time. I'm not certain, but he ended up the police chief. And we ended up getting pulled over. Oh my God. Imagine that. The police chief's daughter, stolen car. We're the bad boys in town. I took off through the woods so fast, it'd have made your head spin. Right or wrong? All right.
I think that sounds like a fun Saturday night, my friend.
I'm not sure it was Saturday, but it wasn't much fun. I had to pay $20 to get a ride home. But at any rate, okay, Mark, pivot to the next story, the free speech stuff.
Yeah, so I think people have been feeling that free speech has been on the line in America. It's certainly on the line all over Europe. It doesn't exist in Europe. The government can control what you say. They can even come to your house if you say something on X that somebody took umbrage with and perhaps made somebody feel offended or hurt. They can possibly arrest you for that, Michael, over here in the dark continent. In America, we have the First Amendment, but it's constantly being pushed now by the left and by the right. And Trump, I think, is the worst, most egregious abuser of this. In his clear abuse of the FCC and Brendan Carr's power. And they've been doing it unapologetically, Michael. Rand used to write about Newton Minow way back when, who was the head of the FCC in the 60s, and what a tyrant this guy was, and how much he really tried to make the FCC purely aligned with its principles of controlling the airways. He really tried to make that happen. I don't think we've seen anything as bad since, except now, where Brendan Carr is claiming that they want equal time if there's politicians that are interviewed on The View. He's ready to penalize them. Of course, we've seen what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, and how a certain franchises come up for review with the FCC, and they make it very clear that they might not renew that franchise in order to put political pressure on these folks. So it's scary, this thing called the FCC, Michael, and it's got a history. It goes back even further than I thought, because I thought at first that the FCC was initially originated by Roosevelt, but it goes back even further. The law, at least, controlling the airways, goes back to 1927 with Hoover. And not surprising, since Roosevelt basically did what Hoover did, just more so in his administration. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about this FCC controlling the airways and what a proper capitalist legal system would look like surrounding airways ownership and control.
So this morning, in the first article I read, I don't remember what the hell it was. The View. They want to crack down on The View now because The View criticizes Donald. And, they're not cracking down for equal access to all the conservative shows
right,
that only interview conservatives. So evidently that the original law, they put in there that if you are giving time to one politician, you have to give equal time to another. But they've carved out exception after exception, and The View falls within one of those exceptions until Donald, because they hurt his pussy little feelings. So that's the backdrop of this. And then we already know about what they did in regard to Jimmy Kimmel. They're threatening licenses and everything else. So I went back and I read Ayn Rand's an essay she wrote, The Property Status of the Airways. And the argument that is constantly put out for why the government has to control the airwaves and grant licenses is because it's limited space, right? And that therefore that they have to control it. First of all, that doesn't even apply anymore, really. When you think about all the different sources of information, outlets for you to put shows on in terms of podcasts, radio, whatever. I mean, there's so many now. But Rand makes the excellent point, and so did the other guy makes the same point in the other article, Chamberlain, I think his name was, that all property is limited. Necessarily, if it weren't limited, who would care? You wouldn't need it as property. It wouldn't have any value. The reason anything has value, when I buy a piece of land or I harvest a piece of land, whatever, I necessarily exclude somebody else from doing the same. This happens all the time. But yet they gave it over, to the government. And one of the things was because there was chaos previously in regard to the airwaves. So instead of going the rational route where the people who discovered, who, figured out how to use the airwaves would be the ones to own them, they went full bore and just said the government is going to control all this. Now, Rand puts forth the solution. Now, I don't even know how applicable it is anymore, really, but I think it still is. To basically privatize, just let the government in an auction sell off the property status in the airwaves, and ultimately the people that are best at developing them and using them will get to. What we have now, when the government controls it, the government can threaten it, the government can take it away. It's a massive assault on free speech, and it's really sucks. That's my technical term.
It's a good term. It's a good term, and it's very descriptive. And I agree with her with her proposition, where she thought that homesteading was a very similar way in which government allowed people to work property and own it without without all the controls of the federal government. And that should have been the way in which we approached the airways. Then the best and the brightest would have gotten them. And we would have an even better market than we have today. But you're right; it's sort of irrelevant because there's so much stuff out there now, Michael.
Yeah, I still do not. The idea of the big orange idiot and his henchmen threatening people because they don't kiss his hairy ass is a little.
That does chafe. It does chafe. But this argument that because the airways are limited, that it has to be controlled by the federal government, is a similar argument that they use with respect to medicine, Michael. The government has to control medicine because it's an inelastic market. And so, especially with procedures like heart procedures or cancer and stuff like that, and inelasticity of the market means the government has to control it, because I guess doctors wouldn't have any financial incentive to help you if you're in an emergency. I don't know. It's madness. I don't think it's a good justification for the medical world, and I don't think the idea of limited airways is a good justification.
No, and by the way, Rand really nails it with the problem is this idea of the public interest. Yeah, that of course is going to be determined by the people in Washington. It's like I put a post out there today on Facebook. And what I said was that, the alternative to the rule of law, in our context, of course, the Constitution, however imperfect it may be, the alternative to that is not to have an objective morality universally applied to the political sphere. That's not what happens when you throw out the rule of law and you throw out the Constitution. What happens is you turn it over to the rule of men, who get to make decisions that may or may not be rational. Usually they're arbitrary. And in case of the current occupant of the White House, they're the whims of Donald Trump.
And that's frightening. Not only that, Michael, they're the whims of a group of people that follow Trump. The right wing nationalists, they seem to be chafing at the idea that the government, that our government and of the United States of America was founded upon principles. I think there was just some recent blowback with Gorsuch in an interview where he claimed that we have a government of principles, and the right went nuts. They went absolutely nuts. What's so funny? Why is she doing that?
Because we did a show on this yesterday.
I know. I didn't see it, but I know this because it's leading into the next thing.
You do have a good segue coming. I'll give you that much.
That's a segue. It's a segue, Persephone. I swear it's a segue to the next thing, because we're going to talk about the principles upon which this country was founded, because it was founded upon principles, regardless of what the crazy right wing wants to say.
Yes.
It's founded upon principles. Let's talk about those principles, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that since I sent you the list of the principles according to...
I have them handy right here.
Yeah. Why don't we do one by one?
Sure. Here are some core principles, folks, and I'm only reading them because I agree with them. Number one, and I think it's justifiably number one, natural rights and individual liberty, which we sum up as individual rights.
Yes.
All people are endowed by their creator. We don't think that, but we do think we have rights based on our nature as rational beings, with inherent inalienable rights that pre-exist government. The Declaration states, and I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Amen. That should be a prayer that everybody says before they go to bed at night, Michael. That's how powerful that thought is.
Right. Without individual rights, right, you have nothing, really. I mean, you have no protections. The idea of individual rights, and it was pretty new, back then. It's been expanded and bastardized and distorted and destroyed, but at the time, it was new, and it was fresh, and it was providing a reason that people should be free. The founders, they got the idea from the likes of John Locke, Hugo Grotius, I believe, was one of their inspirations. Maybe Algernon Sidney, even. I'm not positive about that one, but Locke, predominantly, and of course, in my view, Ayn Rand really gave oomph to the idea of individual rights by grounding it in an entire ethical system. But the country was founded on that principle, and anybody who tells you otherwise, for instance, that tells you no, it was founded on Christianity, they're just wrong. Okay, Paul says, let's see what this is. In high school, my brother and I, $5 too, thank you, Paul. In high school, my brother and I joined friends in a course in rock climbing that met every weekend. It was a splendid rite of passage.
I love that. That's great. I want to say something here, Michael. This last paragraph, governments exist to secure these rights. I think this is an important thought, not grant them. All right. This includes rights to property, conscience, speech, arms, and due process. This is not what government does today, but this is what government would do under a capitalist administration. Two, this is very important, Michael, equality before the law.
Yeah.
The phrase "all men are created equal" rejected hereditary aristocracy and divine right monarchy. It meant equal natural rights and legal status under the law, not identical outcomes, abilities, or group entitlements. The founders rejected class-based legal privileges common in Europe, though the application was imperfect because of slavery and women's legal status. But Michael, a place where men are governed by laws as opposed to men is vital to the preservation of your liberty.
Well, you said that perfectly. I don't really need to even comment.
So here's the third: popular sovereignty and consent of the governed. Legitimate government derives its powers from the consent of the governed. The people are sovereign. That means you and I, Michael, not just a group, but us as individuals are sovereign beings. We are rulers of ourselves, and they are the rulers are our trustees. The politicians, we've given them something in trust, and they have a fiduciary responsibility to us. This underpins Republican government and the right to alter or abolish destructive government. Amen to that. People should be thinking those thoughts before they go to sleep at night. What say you?
Yeah, I think a good way to put it is that the government doesn't have rights that it doesn't get delegated to it from the people, right? If it's immoral for people to do, it's immoral for the government to do.
And that means about 98% of what the government does we could classify as immoral, Michael. I mean,
Yes.
it's practically the subject of all of our shows. Number 4, limited government. So important today. Government power should be restricted to protecting rights and providing. Now, this I didn't agree with. Providing public goods. I don't think they should provide public goods. They should protect rights. Unless you have an issue with that, I don't think they should be providing public goods.
But importantly, though, I mean, it's about what the country was founded on, not about my personal philosophy. So there were contradictions at the beginning, but nevertheless, it was revolutionary in what they were implementing at the time.
Correct. So the Constitution enumerates specific powers for the federal government. The 9th and 10th Amendments reserve others to the states and the people. Excuse me. The founders feared tyranny from concentrated power, drawing from experience with King George and historical examples. Anything to say to that, Michael? Because that's true. And we're seeing this today. Concentrated power.
Look, I said this yesterday. The idea of enumerated powers, separation of powers, these were not intrinsically known, and they certainly weren't things that were adopted by faith. The founders engaged in a massive amount of study of history, of politics, of law, in order to come to the ideas that you have to strictly enumerate powers and hold the government to it, that you need to separate powers and have each department be a check on the other. These were all things that they learned from, like I said, a vast amount of study, and they are vital. And even those things, I mean, it's not enough if the populace doesn't hold politicians to it. That's what everything is held together by in the end, is that the people have to want it and have to cherish it.
Amen to that. Can't get any better than that. Number 6, federalism. Number 5, separation of powers and checks and balances. Something that is.
I just covered. I jumped the gun.
That's all right. But I think that's radically important, Michael, because we see a legislature who is given up its power for decades now. We see an imperial presidency, which Mark Levin had no problem calling the imperial presidency when Obama was in office. But he's got issues saying the very same thing when Trump is in office, and it still applies, if not more so. Yeah. Federalism, the power divided between the national government and the states. The federal government handles national matters like defense, commerce, and foreign affairs. States retain broad authority over local affairs. This creates a compound republic to prevent centralized despotism. This is vitally important to the preservation of your rights and freedoms, folks. The federal government has literally no say in your life. That power is in you. You haven't divested it to the federal government. You haven't given it to them. It's yours.
Except they've come up with some very creative means through, for instance, the Commerce Clause of implementing their will to outlaw drugs. Also, they fund education and then, dictate to the schools what they can do and not do. It's all a lot of bullshit.
Michael, there is a party out there, however, that could start reversing this trend started 120 years ago by the statists out there and the elites who like controlling people's lives.
I hate when you say that.
Why?
Because it didn't just start 120 years ago. They started almost immediately.
Almost immediately. But, I mean, really, the progressive movement was the one that kicked it into gear, and then FDR, I think, is...
All right, I'll give you that. But let's not pretend that they weren't already violating this thing.
There are already shysters in politics. There's always shysters that are attracted to politics. And, of course, they use the fissures and contradictions in the Constitution and in our own moral reasoning, Michael, to continuously advance government over the individual. Yeah. There is a party that doesn't want to advance government over the individual. It wants to advance the individual over government. Can you describe or say what that party is?
I'm trying to think here. Well, I understand that there's this new political party out there called the American Capitalist Party.
Yes, I've heard of this.
They are actually a party of principle rooted in the ideas of objective morality, constitutionalism, constitutional originalism, strong national defense, but not foreign adventurism, protection of individual rights. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff. Randy wants to know: are there any candidates running on the Capitalist Party platform this year? Do we? I believe we have one, or we already did have one.
We ran somebody in a city council in Argo, Alabama, and now he is looking for a state seat. He made quite an impact over there. He did not win. The good old boy won the local seat, but incorporated him into his, I guess, governing group, because I guess Alan's suggestions were so powerful that he couldn't avoid the political impact of them. But I think Alan's moving onward and upward to something else. So that's where we're focusing now. And we're also focusing on expanding to other states. Mike, we have a final thing here, which I think is very important because it relates to freedom of conscience, which I think is super important. Number 8, religious liberty and civic virtue. The First Amendment prohibits federal establishment of religion while protecting free exercise. Many founders believed a moral religious people, or at least a moral people from our perspective, was essential for self-government. They rejected a national church, but assumed broadly Judeo-Christian ethics would sustain liberty. Of course, that's not true, Michael. We see that, in fact, it does often the opposite. What does sustain liberty is rational egoism, the idea that you are an end unto yourself, that you are a rational actor, and that you acting in your own interests is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. That's what preserves liberty and benevolence. My dog is crying. I think my wife went outside, so he's having an anxiety attack. So you'll have to talk for a minute while I mute.
Okay, Mark Pellegrino, doctor to the dogs, folks. He's going to administer his psychological doggy psychology expertise, and he's going to solve the problem. Mark is wonderful with dogs, and he also wears the hell out of a backwards cap. So yeah, I mean, it's the 250th anniversary this year of the country's founding. So I think we'll probably be doing a lot of these types of episodes where we discuss these things. We also do have some other stuff going on in current events. I think I have to go look through here to find it, and I will. Let me just go here to Mark. So there's a report here from Fox News that, inflation has jumped now to 3.8%, its highest increase since 2023, the Fed's report. Look, Trump was going to keep us out of wars. He was going to lower prices, and the economy was going to boom. No, and no are your answers to those things. Those are just facts. Things are more expensive. The economy is not growing, at an extraordinary rate by any stretch of the imagination, and we all know he did not keep us out of wars. It's also there let me see if I can't get in here. There's an article from Reason Magazine. It says that how much has the Iran war actually cost? It's a lot more than $25 billion. He says direct military costs have exceeded $70 billion by one estimate, and Americans have paid more than $37 billion in higher energy costs since the war began. So we've got energy costs are up, inflation's up, the war is costing a lot of money, deficit spending is going up. We're not winning, folks. And I'm not talking about the war. I'm talking about as a country. Right now, we are not winning. Mark has gone off. I was hoping he was going to comment there.
Oh, so what? I have to come back because the dog is spazzing out.
Okay. No, you're okay. What I'm going to do is bring Persephone up because I'm interested to get Persephone's take on this. Persephone, what is your take on the everything we've talked about today, I guess? Comment on anything you'd like to.
Comment on anything I'd like to.
Yes.
The free-range parenting conversation and the importance of recess, that was really kind of confusing to me, because why don't they have recess? Because that seems like really basic information. It would be really cool if you did a Saturday show about education, potentially with a guest. That's another thought that I had.
Sorry, guys. My dog has anxiety when his mommy leaves, and he is inconsolable. So we're trying to work on that. Oh, she's back. Hold on.
Okay. Maribin says, what convinced you three that the underconsumption theory is wrong? I'm going to wager a little bit here that perhaps they don't know what that is, Megan. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Persephone, do you know what she is referring?
No idea.
Okay, Mark, do you know what she is referring
I don't know what
to?
the underconsumption theory is.
Okay. Luckily, you guys have me. And in addition to being very handsome, I happen to know what this is. It's commonly called overproduction. It's Keynes' idea that Say's law is wrong. What convinced me that it's wrong initially was George Reisman in his book Capitalism, a Treatise on Economics, where he explained that if all things were remaining equal, if the money supply were equal, and too much of one product were produced, that necessarily not enough of another product would be produced, and it would therefore even out. That was the first thing. But subsequently, I read things like Benjamin Anderson's account of it. I read Henry Hazlitt's absolutely demolition of Keynes. I also read Keynes. It didn't make much sense to me. Mark Skousen as well demonstrated that it's wrong. The bottom line is that in order to consume anything, you first have to produce. So supply ultimately is demand. So that's what convinced me of it, Megan. I mean, in short order, I don't think we have enough time to really get into a full critique of Keynes' supposed refutation of Say's law, but that's it.
Well done.
Thank you.
So Michael, you talked a little bit. It was hard for me to hear because the dog was completely melting down.
I heard he was upset.
He was very upset. Now he's fine because Tracy's back. But
I don't know. I don't know what Jim Valiant's getting at here, Mark. But he says, "Hold on, let me find what Jim says. Why can't I go up here? It won't slide
escaping
up."
with a bunch of young men to secretly watch Rocky Horror every Saturday for a year. No, nothing to see here, Mark. Okay.
I don't know what
I see
he's
the
into.
writing on the wall.
No, well, it's actually not on the wall; it's on the screen. But okay, so that was that. Yes, and Persephone was just talking about how anybody with a brain should know that children need play.
You're right. Everybody with a brain should. Unfortunately, they don't seem to. So, Michael, you were talking a little bit about how the economy sort of blows right now, and Trump said he was ushering in a golden age. This is going to be the golden age. We're going to go back to the 50s, apparently, which was apparently a golden age. I don't remember it as that. That was my 40th year of life on this planet. But I don't remember the 50s as being as good as today with respect to technology and all the great things we have at our beck and call today. But anyway, they want to go backwards in time. And Michael, everything's just more expensive now. And in Los Angeles, I think a gallon of gas is somewhere in the neighborhood of $7.
Nice.
That's prohibitive.
Yeah. So, Diana drives a Honda Accord, right? Honda Accords are great on gas. They don't take a lot of gas. Yesterday, she filled up the tank, and it cost her over $60
Wow.
to fill the tank. That is insane.
Yeah. So now put an extra 40 on that, and you'll get how much it costs for me to fill up my tank every week.
You just had a one-up me, didn't you?
No, it's just California. If whatever the horrible prices are in Connecticut, they're almost $2 more expensive in California because of our special plans. Hi, buddy. Are you sneaking up behind her?
That was awesome.
He was sneaking up. He was like, I just want to get in mommy's lap.
Can I tell you, though, I was just talking to Diana about this last night. Despite all that, I want to move to Cali. That's where I want to move.
All right, I get it. It's it's a great state in that it has mountains, desert, ocean, sunny weather all the time. But man, the politics is just a cesspool and it kills everything.
It's true, but it also has you and Jim out
That's
there.
true, but Jim is in way south. I'm up in LA.
You could drive. It's like a 3-hour drive, dude. It's nothing.
It's a lot of gas now, man. It's like $500 trip we're talking. I'm kidding.
What? All right. So we've gotten through everything, Mark. I am going to go now and find the answer. Persephone yesterday asked a question that actually was loaded up with answers.
Oh, finally.
Oh, it was sick. She wanted to know about jokes. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you may look at it, we had the boomerific assault of dad jokes from Jim Valiant that were
They
introduced.
Oh, great. That
they
joke's
were
great.
all they were all great. They were all amazing.
Really?
Let me hear one or two.
Oh, well, I got to find them here, and we got to. All right, get rid of that now. All right, so let me go through. So, is Jim Valiant, what did Yoda say when he saw himself in 4K? HDMI. I don't know what that is. I don't even know what that
Oh,
means.
really?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Are you kidding?
No, what does it mean?
Somebody's more boomer than I am.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Yeah. An HDMI cable is something that you plug things in with, like especially if you're plugging like a
Yeah.
TV
If you
into
look at
your
if you look
computer.
at your settings, and you go to your settings,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
HDMI
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
TV or some right HDMI, and that's the way he talked. He always said what do you call the that grammar, Persephone? He reversed like subject object all the time.
Yeah.
Subject
Okay,
predicate.
here's another banger from Jim Valiant. What's the best gift? A broken drum. No one can beat that.
That's great.
All right. How common is it for a cow to be struck by lightning? Medium rare. I went to the rabbi and asked him, what is the meaning of life? He told me the meaning of life, but he told me in Hebrew. I said, I don't know Hebrew. Then he wanted to charge me $500 for Hebrew lessons.
That's fun. That's good.
Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. This is from Ian Gilmore. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. That is Groucho Marx. Engineer Jim Valiant, an engineer dies, realizes he was in hell. Soon he starts building and improving things like air conditioning, water purification, getting good Wi-Fi service, etc. When God checks in to see how things are going in hell, he gets angry. Wait, hell isn't supposed to be like this. Lucifer explains that he recently acquired an engineer. God is furious. Hey, I get all the really useful people. It's in their contract. I'll sue you if you don't give them to me. Lucifer replied, yeah, good luck getting a lawyer. All right, so that's what we got.
That's good.
Yeah. It's a good thing Jim is a lawyer and a philosopher and a historian.
That was good. That was good, Jim. Thanks for that, man.
Don't encourage that.
I'm going to encourage it because
No,
it made me laugh. It felt good.
Oh my
I'm in the dark
God.
continent. I've been here for a month, man.
Okay.
All right, and
Yeah.
it feels good for humor. I like humor.
All right. Well, listen, Mr. Humor, can you
Look at those big soulful eyes looking at you, Persephone, down there. Uh-oh, you're being joined. The
Okay.
whole
She's screaming at me.
All right, we need a capitalist thought of the day, Pellegrino. Can we at least get one of those, and then Persephone can ask the question because she gets the most results?
Oh yeah, it seems like. Look, man, in a capitalist government, the FCC would not exist. You wouldn't have to worry about mandating a recess because private schooling would be just that, private. Schools would be private, and they could institute the rules that they wanted to, and you could pursue the school that best taught your values, and hopefully actually thought that recesses was a good thing for your child as well. I think most people do think that. So look, if you want to reverse the trends that are out there now towards statism, if you don't want a guy like Trump determining what the price of your gas is, then you want a candidate in there who's going to really clear the swamp and let you have your life back. And that's what capitalism is, man. It is a system that enables you to live the best life you possibly can. All right, Michael, go ahead.
That's awesome. Persephone, it's your turn. Ask the question.
What is your favorite thing to make for dinner or your favorite thing to eat during the week? That's my question.
Nice.
Okay, thank you. Please tune in today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, to Everyday Ethics, where I'm sure Persephone is going to have a great topic for us.
Fantastic. Don't forget to do that, guys. Don't forget to answer that question on YouTube. Is that where they have to go answer it, Michael?
Yes.
Go answer it on YouTube because the algorithm likes that kind of thing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel across platforms. And we think this.
Oh, we
these
got so many
ideas-
good shows. So many.
we got so many good shows. If you want your rational alternative, you got to come here for it, guys. Look, I'm gonna see you guys. I'm gonna see you guys tomorrow. All right, so that gives you 23 hours to check your premises. So don't forget to do it, man. Check your premises. Peace.